Okay, great.
Right. I accept your offer. All right. Yeah. So one thing I love doing, I came in about 30 minutes earlier, just to listen to you guys talk, because Diane made it clear that you guys kind of have a potluck where you guys talk and tell stories and stuff. And by the end of this conversation, this presentation, you guys are going to know I like to talk about sailing a lot. So it's really cool to hear the stories and stuff. So yeah, so what I was saying was that I work with the board of directors of U.S. Sailing. I also work with the Diversity and Inclusion Committee for U.S. Sailing. And one of my goals has been to try to get more people with different backgrounds into the sport. And I'll go more into detail about this later on. But one of the things for the Hall of Fame was the Hall of Fame was moved to Newport, and they're also building a sailing museum up there. And one of their goals has been to show full representation of the country. And so this year I worked really hard to get people nominated who are worthy of being nominated. You know, you don't want to have people in there who just in there just because they're in there. And so I got a couple people nominated. One in particular, oops, one in particular is Captain Bill Pickney. He's the second African American to sail around the planet by himself, and he's being honored, enshrined, if you will, by the Hall of Fame next weekend. And so, so that's one of the individuals. The other person was Teddy Seymour. He also cruised around the world in '89, and then some other folks you guys may know, like Bruce Schwab, who was the first American to finish the Vendee. Got him in there as well, partly because he's also my mentor, that kind of stuff. But you know, he's really earned the spot in there. So most of my work has been done already. My wife and I are going up there to support everyone, support the new sailing museum that opens in May, and that kind of stuff. I'll also be doing a talk up there for Sail Newport, which is Brad Reed's organization up there, on November 9th, I believe it is. And so that one hopefully will be in person if COVID allows. So if for any reason you guys are on the opposite side of the world, you guys are welcome to, of course, attend and meet me in person. So cool. So, all right, I'll give it about 3 more minutes, and then at that point, Diane, I can share my screen now if you guys wanted to set it up real quick, just so.
Sure. Yeah, I guess, yeah, you can share your screen. I guess it'd be good if most people muted themselves, and maybe we should mute ourselves in this room. So yeah.
All right.
All right. And then you know, of course, we can unmute ourselves if we want to say something. And
yes.
Yeah, and I think you were saying that your presentation's in 2 parts, and you have a break for questions after each half. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So there's 2 Q&A sessions. The presentation is broken into pretty much 2 halves. One's kind of an introduction, background information, and then the second part is about the actual program itself. So the first Q&A, if you will be for you guys to ask me questions about my background, things we've done, and that kind of stuff. And then the second part will be about the records and stuff like that. So, yeah.
I'm not sure Mark knows his mic is on. Hey, Mark, your mic's on.
Hey, what's that?
Yeah. So one of the cool things too, and I'm going to talk about this real quick because it's not part of this presentation, but one of the other projects that we're working on actually is for the 2024 Vendee Globe. This presentation does not cover that, but we're signed up with a firm out of the UK called Whitecap, and we have a boat for that race already. They're working on sponsorships for that race. But if you have questions about that particular program, you can ask me at the end or offline, if you will. So All right, so I'll get started now. So I won't hold you guys up too much. So hello, everyone. My name is Captain Donald Lawson. Thank you so much for attending the presentation. It really is a treat and an honor to speak to everyone. I love sailing, and I hope it comes across in this presentation. I hope my passion for the sport resonates for you guys and motivates you guys to keep doing what you love doing as well. And so one of the things I always do when I start the presentation, I always suggest people to take out their cell phones and go online and look at Facebook and Instagram and type in Captain Donald Lawson. And the reason why is as I'm presenting here in front of you with the slides, you're able to actually look at videos and pictures of the sailing stuff I'm talking about. And so, for example, if you go to Facebook, type in Captain Donald Lawson, always hit the follow or like button and send me a message, which is very important because Facebook has it so I can't talk to you until you message me first. So it's very important. Join the page, hit follow, like, and send me a message saying, hi, your presentation is wonderful or it's terrible, depending on how you feel. And that way I can communicate back with you guys that way. And same with Instagram. And if you guys are into LinkedIn, LinkedIn is there as well. Just Captain Donald Lawson. And feel free to take a look at the pictures, the videos, and that kind of stuff. So as you guys see from the title, the program is actually called Dark Seas, The Voyages of Captain Donald Lawson, because we're actually filming my world records as a documentary. It became apparent to me after a 100th person told me they would like to see video footage of me out there on the ocean doing what I'm doing, that we need to start documenting it properly. And so we partner with a documentary firm called IAM out of San Francisco, where we are developing this film. And again, on the Facebook and stuff, you'll see video footage of some of the stuff we've already recorded. And the program is really built around one main goal, which is for me to compete for 25 world records. And I'm going to tell you what the records are. I'll show you some of the records in a second. But I wanted to put these two cool pictures up here for you guys to see, just so you guys can see some of the cool multi-hulls I raced on and I have raced on. The one to the left of the screen is a Reynolds 33 catamaran. It's called Wild Card. Well, at least it was called Wild Card. And I actually won 2 Chesapeake Bay Multihull Championships on that boat, including a couple of records I'll tell you guys about later. And then the boat on the right is a 43-foot trimaran Corsair called Triple Threat that I was fortunate to race on for a couple seasons, where we set a number of records on the East Coast as well. And then the picture in the middle is just a picture of me looking cool in Baltimore. So, all right. So next up is my background. So when I talk to kids and people, a lot of times I always let them know I'm not a fake captain, I'm a real captain. I have my certification from the U.S. Merchant Marine. And for those who are watching who are not familiar with sailing, in order to have a boat and get paid at sea while you're actually providing a service, you have to be certified through Coast Guard training and with U.S. Merchant Marine's approval. And so, fortunately, I don't do any of that anyways. I got my captain certification to expand my knowledge, improve my knowledge when it comes to doing other stuff on the water. The picture to the left is one of my proud pictures. That was after we won the 2nd multi-hull championship in Chesapeake Bay. We would have won a 3rd one, but we broke our mast in the Governor's Cup at the start. For you multi-haulers, you'll appreciate this story of when you're slamming up wind in big seas, you don't dump your main sheet because it's serving as a backstay. And the person who was helping the skipper at the time with the backstay or the main sheet didn't know that, dumped the main sheet, mast buckled at the spreader, and we ended up getting 3rd place that season in the championship ranking. So, but the 2 years we had, they were good. That's the championship trophy we got. So, as far as just detailed background, as I said, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I've been sailing for 30 years all around the planet. I've been really, really fortunate. One of the cool things is when you're out there and Well, let me start from the very beginning. So I started sailing at Living Classroom Foundation in Baltimore. It's a nonprofit that does work to try to expose kids to different opportunities in life. And once I started going to camp there and working there, I got hired by Downtown Sailing Center, by the U.S. Naval Academy, and I got hired by different teams and programs around the world to teach sailing as well. So we like to joke and say that I pretty much have sailed and taught everywhere except Antarctica at this stage. But the fun thing is that by doing these different projects and coaching and racing different places, you build a reputation and network, and you get invites to go on other boats. So we look at some pictures here. You'll see me on some Open 60s there, some Maxis, trimarans, the Sonar 23s, and some other stuff too there. And so I do this full time. I'm very fortunate to be able to do this full time because some of the folks I started off with had to move on, whether it's kids or career. And so I feel fortunate and blessed to be able to keep doing this. As far as race records, we set a number of records on the East Coast, and like the Governor's Cup, Solomon's Race, the Oxford Race. And some of the cool stuff about that is that because of the boats and the crew we had, some of our records are still standing 10 years later after we set them. And some races, we actually were the first boats to finish in 24 hours and that kind of stuff. So I consider myself blessed as well to be able to sail with good sailors and good boats, stuff like that. For the non-sailors, sailing is much like any other sport where you generally have a really wealthy or well-off person who owns a boat, and they need people to help them man the boat or crew the boat. And what happened with me as a kid, I started off very passionate, but not knowing a ton at 9, 10 years old. But I started learning as I took classes and courses and stuff. And when you're walking the dock in these marinas on Thursday nights or Friday nights for racing, most of these teams are looking for people to hop on board the boat, even if it's just to be rail meet or to actually do work on the boat. And if you can't do a certain job, then you can't get a ride. And so what happened for me, I had to master and learn positions, every position on the boat. So when I'm walking down the dock, a person would say, "Hey, can you trim a mainsail?" Yes, I can. Or can you fly a kite? Yes, I can. Can you work in the pit? Yes, I can. And so by diversifying my skill set, I was able to get these rides on these different boats and work for these really cool sailors and stuff. And so I mentioned in the beginning about people I got to work with, and I mentioned Bruce Schwab and Jim Muldoon on his boat Donnybrook. Got to work with him a couple times as well, and JP Clement, who was actually the Royal Yacht Club Sailor of the Year on his boat Saloon. Got to race with him out of France and stuff. So for those who are listening who are just new to the sport, there's no limit to how far you can go with the sport. It's really about what you bring to the table and how you can deliver for those who are entrusting you with their vessel. And so one of the other things I did for money as a college kid was I got to do deliveries. And so again, for those who don't sail, what happens a lot of time, people buy boats and they use them 4 times a year, but they use them in different locations around the world, around the country. And so they hire people to move their boat for them to the new destination. And what happened for me was when I was a child, I had these National Geographics, and I would put them on the wall, the maps and stuff, and I would draw routes where I would go around the world and that kind of stuff. And I noticed there was these dash marks between cities, like let's say New York and was actually Lizard Point, but off of the UK. And I'll see these lines, and it would say like shipping route. And I found out later on that those are also record routes, because the goal back in the day for merchants was to try to get cargo from point A to point B as quickly as possible. And so for you basketball fans, the Los Angeles Clippers, for example, are named after Clipper ships. And the Clipper route, they used to go from New York to San Francisco, which happens to still be a record route to this day. And so one of the cool things that I learned from Bruce on his Open 60 was that if you actually sail from certain ports correctly, you can actually set records. And so that became part of my passion for sailing. And the last part about this is that when I was racing on boats and crewing on boats, I didn't realize that I was also training for my future. And so using a Karate Kid analogy that I always use, an original Karate Kid, not like the newer one, but the good one in the 80s. In that film, Mr. Miyagi had Daniel painting a fence, right? And he hasn't painted the fence for like 2 weeks and his arm's hurting, he's all upset. And he's like, why are you painting this fence? I thought you were going to train me how to do karate. And it turned out him learning the motion, painting the fence, taught him how to defend himself. And in sailing, that's actually what happened for me when I started doing deliveries. Like I did a delivery from Miami to New York. And when you have someone's boat, your job is to get the boat there safely in one piece. So you have to weather out, you have to inform the port master that you're coming to and going, and you do the delivery and you get there. And for those who've been offshore, no, you always leave when the wind's behind your back, the following seas, so you don't slam upwind all the way. And it turned out that I actually did tons of those, and I realized, hey, well, actually, I didn't realize. Bruce told me, hey, we probably would have broke the record for this route as fast as we traveled. We got there in 3 days downwind. And it dawned on me like, hey, all these deliveries I've been doing, getting paid to do, have been perfect training for my dream of actually doing records. And so now when I'm actually out there on these boats, I have quite a bit of experience now planning and executing route making and planning them out. So that's pretty cool. So that's a little background for me. So more background. So I was been fortunate because I've been so busy to get people and companies and business and organizations to start supporting my work. And these are just some of them. There's a couple of them I actually forgot to put on there, and that's slipped my mind. So one of the first ones I'm going to talk about is sports management worldwide. I know Scott's actually on the call listening in. He's my representative. He's my partner for developing this project for records. And I'm in debt to him for all the work he does because, without people like him helping you, you can't get this kind of stuff done. And so kudos to Scott and his team. From there, you have Ocean Planet Energy. That's Bruce Schwab's energy company now. Independent Arts and Media, that's the documentary company. We all know U.S. Sailing and their partnerships that we have with them. Rios is one of my newest partners. Actually, I'm wearing this shirt right now. They actually make really cool sunglasses that float in the water. And so I've been using those lately because I have historically lost reading glasses and sunglasses in the water. And so they've been a great supplier of gear and sunglasses for me. And if you're ever interested in getting a pair of sunglasses on a discount, let me know because I have a special code for you for the website for that. I mentioned the Hall of Fame Sailing Museum. Whitecap is the company that's handling the Vendee Globe stuff, which again, I could talk to you guys about that offline if you're interested in hearing more about that. And then the League of Conservation Voters, that's a organization that promotes clean energy usage around the country. And I'll have a little bit more about them, or at least about my environmental goals and missions at the end of the presentation here. The last two left for the end on purpose. The first one is Living Classroom. That's where I started sailing, and they're a major partner in my project. I can't go more in depth with that yet. I wanted to today, but we're still finalizing things today, actually. So hopefully soon enough, you guys will see that on my Facebook, Instagram page. And last but not least is the World Sailing Speed Record Council. So for those who don't know, I'm sure you guys have heard of the Guinness Book of World Records, which is cool, and they do a lot of tracking of cool records and stuff. But for the sport of sailing, all records are governed by the WSSRC. And it was created, I think, back in the late 70s because people were going out claiming they did things they didn't do. So they came along and created rules and guidelines for all of us to follow. And one of the coolest sailors to ever live, he's no longer here with us, was Steve Fawcett. He was a master at multi-hull sailing offshore. You guys may remember his boat PlayStation, which was a giant catamaran. It was a 125-foot catamaran, American design and mostly American sailed. And he did tons of records with that boat around the world and stuff. He also set a number of records with his trimaran Lakota, which was an early age Orma 60. And some of those records still stand to this day, actually. And some of those records we're actually targeting for our project, actually, to try to bring them to a modern day level. And so let's go next slide. Actually, I have more information. Oh, actually, we'll stop here. I'm going to pause for questions about everything I just ran through. And I promise you we'll get into records, records we're going to be doing, and more stuff in a second. So any questions so far?
So how long, you've got 25 records you're looking at. How long do you think it'll take to hit them all?
So the goal is to cover all the records within the next 10 years. Because practicality matters. You have to do most records in a certain season. And so, for example, you don't go around the world, for example, unless it's the winter time, because the winter time up here is the summertime in the South. And you want to be down there when it's a little warmer, quotation mark, warmer down there. So the key is that just like other record routes, like you guys have the Transpac, for example, your race is during the summertime, but you probably want to do the records during the spring and the fall because the winds are a little more consistent and strong, type of thing. And so those kind of things dictate the schedule.
Logistics, I'm assuming you're doing this on different boats, or are you shipping a boat around the world?
So right now, we are in talks for a boat in particular that can do all the records. And one of the things that you do, and I have to honestly say this, the French are the masters at this. So right now, most of the world records are held by those guys and girls. And the way they do it is they do it in a chain of records. So for example, which I'm going to go over in a few minutes, I'm going to start one record in southern east coast of the US. I'm going to end up in the northern part of the US. And then from there, I'm going to go to an island. And from there, I'm going over to Europe. And so you just make it into a subway, if you will, where you have subway stops.
Yeah, your own delivery via race routes, right?
There you go. See, you figured it out.
Is it legitimate to use hydrofoil assist?
Ooh. So that's the controversy going on right now, because most of the newer boats are all foil assisted, and I mean fully foil assisted. And so most of the newer, if not all, the newest record-breaking multi-hulls are trimarans and the full foilers. And there are rules inside of the WSSRC about having to do things unassisted without outside assistance and electronic systems and hydraulic systems. But I believe they have come to the conclusion that for certain classes of boats, they will allow unlimited technology. And so for our boat will be a semi-foiling boat. So that's a little hint.
You actually cross an ocean on a foil? I mean, it's work.
Yeah.
Must be immense over there.
Yeah. So right now, the fastest circumnavigation period is held by Francis Gabar on board his former trimaran Massif, which was like 115 feet long, and he did that fully foiled around the world, and he got around in 42 days, which I believe is only 3 days off from the crew record around the world on a semi-foiling trimaran. And so next year, I believe it is, they're actually going to race those 100-foot trimarans around the world single-handed. And they're all full foiling boats. So just picture America's Cup AC-72 that's 40 feet longer with one person on board going around the world. That's kind of the best analogy I can give you for that.
Did you say fully foiling?
Fully foiling, yep. So if you guys want real quick, you can take a quick look on your Facebook real quick and just type in Gitana, Gitana trimaran, and just take a look at that monstrosity of a boat. And she's 135 feet long, and she's designed to be used for crew for the Jules Verne record, and also to be used by an individual by around the world. And I actually took a picture of the presentation. I wish I hadn't now, but Bank Populaire also just built a new boat. And then what's the other one? Sodebo built one for Thomas Claville, and so there's about 6 of these boats now over there of the modern version out there going. But the most important part, those boats are each $20 million a piece. Okay, and so there's only a few companies out there who are putting that kind of money up for those kind of boats. So what I'm going to do actually now, just for the because we're having this talk now, I'm just going to jump to the next slide. We still can do a Q&A here, but I want to show you guys this so you guys can see something real quick. That's just me right there sailing on a trimaran. So, and again, you feel free to ask questions for this particular slide if you have questions on this slide and what we're talking about here, because this is going to cover that last question here. So the way the WSSRC set it up was that there's 3 divisions. So I'm going to go backwards. There are 3 divisions based on size. You have the 40 feet and smaller. You have what we call the 60 foot and smaller, but it's really 59 feet, 11 inches and smaller. And then you have any boats that's over 60 feet long. And so if you look at it from, so you guys on the West Coast, so you guys have Pyewacket as one of your fastest monohulls over there, for example. So you take that boat, she would be considered in the over 60 foot category. And so if she set a record between Los Angeles and Hawaii in Transpac, she would qualify for that size boat. But if you take a boat like a TP52, it will fall in the 60 feet or smaller category, and they will set a record in that category. And then the class 40 will set a record in the 40 foot size. And so the size of the boat matters, because if you have a boat that's 61 feet long, you're now in the unlimited class, competing against boats that are 135 feet long. So having the right boat at the right size for you really does matter. And so for us, the 60 foot class is where we compete. Any questions on that first part?
So are you leading up to telling us what boat you're going to sail this on?
I wish I really could. I really do. And I guess Scott's on the call and he could back, don't back me up, Scott. I'm good here. But but we are in discussion for the right boat. And the boat itself, when you guys do find out and see what it is, there's a story behind it, because I've been trying to get this boat for about a decade. And she's really one of the most amazing boats ever built. But I have to leave it there at that point. But she's a multi-hull, number one. And she's a very fast multi-hull. So I have to leave it there. Yeah, so, all right. So then the next section that matters, so you have division, size of the boat. I'm sorry, what? You had a question?
Trimaran or catamaran?
Oh, well, it has to be a trimaran because it's for records. So gotta leave it there. I'm very passionate about multi-hulls, as you guys can tell, because there are benefits to both types of boats, particularly the type of racing or record route you're doing and where you're going. And so short-handed trimarans are safer for multiple reasons besides just the extra hull, but your riding moment's much higher. You have a lot more room for error, obviously, because by the time for you non-sailors, a trimaran has 3 hulls, catamaran has 2 hulls. Once you get to a certain point on a trimaran, you're gonna flip over. But the catamaran, you have less room for error for flipping over. And so, without being too nerdy about it, there hasn't been a record-breaking catamaran built in almost 20 years. I think the last one was Orange 2 by Bruno Peyron. And after that, every boat since then has been a trimaran. So for those reasons. And plus, you can go faster, point higher. I mean, there's all kind of stuff benefit. The mast is on the main hull. You can carry more foils. I mean, there's so many different benefits to it over a cat for offshore passage making. And one of the cool things I heard you guys talking about your boats, and I heard most of you guys have Corsairs and stuff, which are great boats. And I was fortunate to race Corsairs for a number of years, even did nationals as well. And they're really, really, really cool, stable boats. I love the furling system on the boom. It's a really, really good idea. But I digress. Sorry. So as far as so next section, so divisions here, size of the boat. Then you have categories. And so the categories are based on what type of vessel. So we just mentioned catamarans, trimarans. Those are considered multi-hull. And then you have monohull. So those are your two true categories. And then from there, are you going by yourself? Are you going double-handed, which is a big thing now, double-handed sailing, or are you going for crew? And then it goes from there. You breaks it down based on types of boats as well: monohull, crew, single-handed, double-handed. And so, for example, if you're on a 60-foot trimaran by yourself, then you're in the 60-foot trimaran single-handed category division, and that's who they measure you by. From there, the record routes are pretty much unchanged, and I don't see them changing because they're fun. A lot of people who go out there and do deliveries or racing, some of the routes and races we've done have been done for 30, 40, 50 years, or sometimes hundreds of years. And so most of these record routes are still trade routes used today by commercial vessels, cruise ships, and naval warships. And as I mentioned earlier, I learned about them as a child on National Geographic. My mom gave me for to build my wall, my bedroom. And so once I knew I could do it, that's when I started doing it. And as one of the gentlemen said for my joke about, it's pretty much a whole bunch of deliveries, point A to point B, and then to point C, point D, point E, and F. One of the important things to note is that they are still expensive to do. Most records, you have to pay anywhere between $15,000 to $20,000 to actually do it, because there are a number of tracking devices you need to have, rent, or use. There are umpires and judges that have to come to your start and your finish, and they also have to monitor you live while you're actually out there as well. So a good example was, I think last week, a boat up in the Great Lakes did Chicago, the Mackinac crude record, and broke that record. And so if you were watching that, you could actually watch it on their Facebook page, watch them as they do it. And once they finish, they have to get it ratified by the WSSRC. And so they don't play around with these rules. There's been people who've done records. And I'll give you a great example. There was a race called The Race, ironically, in 2000, which was the first large multi-hull race around the world. And there was about 4 or 5 boats, and I think one of those, Team Phillips, of course, got destroyed before the race. But Club Med and Team Adventure, was skippered by Cam Lewis, got first and second in that race. And as Grant Dalton and those guys on Club Med were about to finish that race, they really thought about not crossing the finish line, but going up to Brest, France, to cross that finish line so they can get the Jules Verne record, actually. And so it's one of those things where even if they had done that, it would have been an unofficial record. So everything has to be done by the rules, by the book. I even remember Steve Fawcett, actually, when he took PlayStation around, I don't think he actually did it under the rules of the council. So I think, even though they got around the world in record time, it's an unofficial record, for example. So they don't play around. They put a tracking device, a black box on your boat, they calibrate it, 2 stopwatches, and they monitor you all the way around. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I actually like the rules that way. That way, everything's done fairly by everyone. And one thing I want to stress on this slide here is that a lot of people who take off for these records sometimes don't finish the records because of debris and trash in the water if they actually hit. And so I'm not sure if you guys follow the Vendee Globe around the world race. It happens every 4 years, but the last edition just ended last winter, about 5 or 6 boats didn't finish because they hit debris in the water off of South Africa, actually. And so it's one of those things where because these record routes are also trade routes, and not every country, every crew follows the rules of the sea, sometimes you'll get trash in the water. And I believe on the West Coast about a year ago, you got, it was Hawaii, there was a freighter that dropped like 1,000 containers in the water. And a lot of times those containers don't sink and they just follow the currents forever. And so actually there also was a boat that I think in the Ark a couple years ago that hit something and the crew was lost because of that. But so the debris in the water is one of the most difficult parts. We do have new software and systems. One of the cool ones that we have now is called Oscar. It's like optical something. Some smart guy thought of. And it actually has a sensor on top of the mast that sees out about 2 miles. And the computer, the autopilot that's steering, the computer that's steering reacts to debris in the water based on the sensor. And so that's a cool system to have now, especially nowadays on the boats we race on, because we're traveling sometimes at 25, 20 knots at sea, and your reaction time is so small that even if you see something 100 yards in front of you, you have like 2 seconds to react to it. And if you guys get a chance, go on YouTube and check out the Volvo Ocean Race a couple years ago, where I think Dong Feng was sailing along and the helmsman missed a whale by 15 feet while they were going bit downwind. Technology is helping us out a lot. And I always tell people, last point about this, is that if this was like the 1960s, I probably wouldn't be doing this because it's not the most safe thing to do all the time. But I do have a policy that I always come home. So I don't take any risks that are not worth taking. And so I'm very grateful for the technology and the people I work with in that respect. So any questions on the records real quick? And I'm going to jump into our records next.
What do you think is the most important record recognized by the general world sailing community? And what's the most important record for you?
So it's actually the same record. The most important record in the world and the most important to me is a circumnavigation nonstop. And so one of the things that you guys may find interesting is that there's only been 4 human beings to sail around the world nonstop on the Multihull. And all of it's been within the last 20 years, I think it is actually. I think the first person was Francis Joyon, then Ellen MacArthur, then Francis Joyon again, Thomas Cavill 3 times, and then Francis Cabar 1 time. And that's it. And they weren't the first to try, but they were the 4 that finished. If you guys want a cool sea story to read, the Golden Globe race back in '68, there were some multi-hulls in that race. And one of the guys was on a trimaran who would have won that race had some stuff not happen from a competitor that was cheating. And so the first circumnavigation nonstop would have been the trimaran, actually. So to answer your question, that's my long answer there. So,
you were talking about running into containers as a real ability. Right now in Port Townsend is a couple who ran into a container.
Oh, yeah.
Sea wind,
1160.
And we got to see the result of their bow, which was crushed almost to the bulkhead. I mean, it was very close. But the thing that struck me was they said it happened in the middle of the day. They never saw the container. They hit the damn thing. It crushed their boat. They never saw it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That Oscar must have some amazing technology.
It is. It's brand new tech that just tested out for the first time last year. And for not just racers but cruisers as well. Your boat's your baby. That's it's not your first or second home. And for people like me, it's your workspace. And it can be very frustrating hitting tree trunks or trash bags in the water. I could tell you stories of, well, I'll give you one story in particular. We were sailing in the Gulf Stream, which on the Atlantic seaboard, we have a current that runs from Miami up to Newfoundland, Newfoundland. And that current carries so much trash and debris that when you're hitting south in particular, you're fighting the current. I've hit all kinds of stuff in the water. I'm not going to say what, but animals that no longer were alive. I mean, we were hitting all kinds of stuff at certain points off of Cape Hatteras and stuff. And it's, I've seen the ocean change dramatically over the last, well, I've been on the ocean for 25 years. So in the last 25 years, I've seen the ocean change pretty dramatically, especially on the East Coast and the Caribbean. And also, if you guys ever get a chance to go over to Europe, the Bay of Biscay is so much different now than it was in the 90s, where there's so much stuff floating around in there because they have a current as well that kind of goes clockwise. And they also have a kind of a smaller current that kind of goes counterclockwise from the south. And it's like, it's kind of, oh, there it is. Thank you, Justin. Jonathan. So thank you, Jonathan. Yeah. And so the oceans have changed dramatically. And so those kind of systems are needed. And hopefully the kids get smarter and keep developing more stuff for us to have fun with. So
let me ask you a question about your system. Can
yes.
it detect a semi-submerged?
That's the goal of it. The real goal of the Oscar system is to detect semi-submerged containers in hopefully fully submerged ones if they're cresting in a wave. And I stress that point right there because again, most of the routes we do have pretty big sea waves. And sometimes they can be fully submerged, like completely 5 feet down, or they can just be on the brim and they'll pop up and then disappear. And I haven't seen all the data from the couple boats that have used it yet, but it's a system that I think even the military is considering putting on their ships. I'll put it that way to you.
Does it give you enough warning if you're on your off watch and you're sleeping to get up and do something about it?
Right. So the system is hooked up to your autopilot. And so generally speaking, most of the time when we're out there on the water, we're not hand steering as much as we used to because the pilot's now.
No, I realize that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there are alarms. I think that's what you're asking. There are alarms that will go off. And so at that stage, it's about how fast you can get to the helm if the pilot is not going to respond quickly enough.
Right. I've always been a little bit dubious about foiling, especially in these waters up here. There's so much kelp and debris in all the tide lines. I'm a little concerned about it.
Yeah, because seaweed and kelp and stuff can get on your foils. You know, part of it also is that these boats that are foiling now are designed to be full foilers. They're not designed to be displacement hull multi-hulls.
Yeah.
And so if the foils get damaged, it's kind of one of those situations where you have to decide, is it worth going all the way through? Because at that stage, and one thing for people who don't know, the foils help lift the boat out of the water so you can go faster, but that's also a safety feature. Because what happens, there's really two ways of flipping your boat over. You have your capsize over the side, and you have pitch pulling.
Yeah.
And you got pitcher and big waves. If you have a foil further up front, at a certain speed, it starts lifting the leeward bow out of the water, which reduces your chances of pitch pulling. Now, of course, you're going to go faster, but the good thing about that is if you can also reduce your sail area at that point, or depending on what kind of sail how fast you're going, your apparent wind, you can either come up a little bit or come down a little bit, dump some air off. But the foils actually help from a safety route as well. And a lot of the newer boats also have water ballast in their aft section of the boat as well now too. And so you can drag the back of the boat in the water and have the foil with the assistance of the head sail pull the bow up, and you can almost hydroplane. I can't think of a better analogy, but hydroplane like you would a jet ski a little bit.
All right. Yeah.
So cool. Any other questions on that? I love questions, by the way. Any other questions on that, and where I can keep going?
You know, reading the multi-hulls in San Francisco, coming off the foils and pitch poling and killing the guy.
Yeah, well, so Artemis, when they broke apart, I'm not sure if they pitch pole or they just went over, turtled over, but that gives you a good example of how easy it is to lose control of a boat on a foil, because well, most of the boats out, and this is semi-biased, but most of the designers overseas understand cavitation on foils better than some of us over here do. And when you design a foil package, they will cavitate at a certain point in time. And what cavitation is for non-sailors is once a foil, whether it's an airplane or on the water, gets to a certain amount of pressure, it starts developing bubbles. And the bubbles then create space between the water and the actual surface. And when that happens, you lose complete control of that foil. And that's what happened to Artemis when Andrew Simpson passed away and that capsized. So yeah, it's pretty sad. So that's why it's important. One of the things that I always, when I teach or when I race, I always tell people one of my goals is to slow the boat down, not to actually accelerate. I try to keep the boat as polars based on where we're trying to go and what we're trying to achieve. And then if someone's going to beat us because they're willing to break their boat, they're welcome to do that. And so the discipline is one of the things you learn sailing and racing multi-hulls, is knowing how to back off the gas and finish safely with the boat in one piece. So yeah, so all right, so cool. Because let me jump to this next slide. I only have like 4 or 5 slides left. I want to make sure I cover all of it. So if there's any other questions on these topics here. So one of the things we're going to do next year is we're going to do some, I'm gonna call them short distance records of about 2,800 miles or less. Okay, I'll leave that there. So I'm gonna talk about just these 2 records for the time being. So 2 records we're gonna do, they're about 600 mile passages. Again, a fun fact, most races now offshore are about 600 miles because you generally can cover them in a day and a half. And so what you'll notice on these 2 records right here, Miami to New York and Newport to Bermuda, Newport to Bermuda in particular is 635 miles, and it took Lake Steve Fawcett a day and 16 hours to complete that passage. At the time, and particularly with that particular boat, Lakota, that was a really good number. But some of the faster boats that we're able to sail on now, particularly the race records for Newport to Bermuda, are much faster. And in fact, the race record is actually faster than the record passages right now. And so he averaged about 15 knots in that passage. Some of the boats do about 20 knots in that passage. And you'll notice with the green line there going down from Newport down to, that is Newport, you know, it says New York, Newport's where the line's lined up at. From Newport to Bermuda, you're crossing the Gulf Stream there. And that's the most difficult part of that passage. But I've done that passage now 15, 20 times, deliveries and races and stuff. So I'm pretty comfortable with that short passage. New York and Miami, I've only done 2 times. Once as delivery, once as a fun race, club race, you want to call it that. That record's held by Thomas Cavill on his boat. That one actually goes with the Gulf Stream. So if you can hook onto it at the right time off of Miami, just north of the Bahamas, you'll get about 3 or 4 knots of extra current to push you north. And so those are the 2 target records we're going to try to do in the spring with our boat. And they're not by any stretch of the imagination easy records, but they are definitely records that I would say after 15, 20 years are records that probably need to be updated. And so we're going to aim for those this spring coming up. So any questions on that right there real quick? Well, I'll go to the next slide.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Are you planning to do that single-handed on the 60 foot?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I
Well-
forgot to mention that point. Yeah, all my records are single-handed, yes. All of them are solo records. one of the goals I have, and this is a personal thing, we can call it competitiveness or I don't drive, but one of my goals has always been to prove my skill, prove my abilities. And I've done a lot of passages sailing offshore solo racing on boats of multi-hull types and monohull types. And one of the things that I learned early on is the best way to prove what you're able to do is to sail a boat short-handed or single-handed, which is part of the reason why I love multi-hull so much. A lot of folks, if you picture the traditional monohull, you have 13, 25 people on board, and everyone has one job, and you only get to do one job. But if you sail on a multi-hull, no, you have 3 people, maybe 2, and you have to do everything on board, and you have to do it efficiently if you're racing, especially because the other person's depending on you, you're depending on them, and so one of the things I love about shorthanded and solo sailing is that when I get done, people say you did a good job. They don't say, "Hey, you got lucky." They say you did a good job, and so that's part of my competitive nature, and that's why I have a desire to do these passages single-handed for as official records, because I've done it before. I just want to do them as a record now, so I can stake claim to them. So cool. And someone asked me earlier about the records that mean the most, and so here's some fun things for you guys about what records mean the most to me right now. And so these are top 5 records I'm aiming for next year. And I mentioned, I'll start from the bottom, there are only 4 people who've ever finished around the world on passage on a multi-hull. And so I intend to be the 5th to do that. And believe it or not, the first American as well, which is the one right above that. From there, culturally, no one in my culture has ever done this before either. And so people always ask me why that matters. Well, it matters for my culture. That's why. And so for me to do it and represent people who are not usually in the sport of sailing, it means a lot to them and it means a lot to me. So that's that one there. And then the fastest American, no one has to answer this question, but do you guys know who owns the American nonstop record around the world? Anyone? No? Do you guys know who the first American was to go nonstop around the world?
What's his
Okay.
name? The guy on spray?
The American Promise, Dodge Morgan. He was the first American to go around nonstop. I mean, he actually held the world record when he did that. After him, you had Mike Plant almost completed it, but he had stopped, had to anchor off New Zealand, anchor dragged, and he had got disqualified from the Vendee. He was the second. And then Bruce Schwab, my mentor, actually was the first American to finish the Vendee Globe and the second American to get around nonstop. And then he held that record for about 15 years until Rich Wilson of Great America went around the Vendee, did the Vendee twice, and now holds the record of 107 days. And so if you guys remember earlier when I mentioned to you the outright record was 42 days, the American record is 107 days. And so yeah, so that groan is a good groan. So we should all feel the same way. So one of the goals is to bring that number 107 down to a sub 100 and bring it more into that respectful range. For our class of boat 60 footers, that record is actually 74 days. And so the goal is to get around that number or a little lower. And so if we can do that, we'll be the fastest American, but we'll also be more competitive with the world in that respect. And then, as I mentioned, our class is 74 days. And so if we can go below that, we will be the fastest person of our class to ever do it as well. And so, so those are the targets that we're aiming for next year. We do have a semi-official date to start. We're just not saying yet. We don't want to put anything out there before our sponsors and partners are ready to have a big hoopla about everything. So, so any questions on those right there?
Where do you intend to begin?
Excellent question. So I'm about, based on the boat we're trying to get, I'm about 99% sure I'm starting from my hometown of Baltimore. If other things work out differently, then we'll consider other locations as well. There are tactical advantages to starting at different places, but for the point of partnerships and people who are working with us, right now it seems to be my hometown of Baltimore. So, oh, there you go. I forgot to put the slide in here. So, why these records matter? And so, what you have here, how I try to look at it and try to present it to everyone, is kind of a pyramid where you start from just being a human being, having as a world competition, trying to be the best person to do it ever of all the billion people who live on the planet, and then try to do it for the country to bring us to more respectable number and also bring some prestige for American sailing as well. And then for my culture as well, trying to bring on some more people like myself to give the sport a try and also make history that everyone can celebrate together. And then the fourth, which in some ways for myself is most important, is personal achievement, because I've always wanted to do this. This has been my dream since I was 9 years old. And so my drive and push to do this simply comes from, since I was 9 years old, I haven't wanted to do anything else. I haven't tried to do anything else. And all the mentors and people who worked with me in the sailing schools and the millionaires and their boats and stuff, all of it's led me up to this point. And I haven't mentioned all my mentors yet. I'm just going to mention two quick ones as well. I mentioned Bruce already, but one of the other persons that inspired me and helped me out a lot was a woman named Ellen MacArthur. And she's now a dame. She has MBE Knight honor from the UK. When she was 24, she went around the world, almost won the Vendee, came in second by a day. And then she went off and went around the world on a trimaran, becoming the second person to go around the world in a trimaran, or multi-hull, I should say. And then she also set that world record at 71 days. And I got to meet her before she set off for that record. And I got to talk to her. And basically what happened was she came to our sailing school in Baltimore because a race came in that she was racing in. Of course, she won. And she came to the sailing school and she talked to everyone. But I didn't have a chance to talk to her myself because I had to go teach the kids. And so when I got back, she was gone. But I ran into her at a Royal Farms across the street randomly, and being a little crazy kid, got excited. Didn't scream, but got excited. And I walked up to her. She's only like 5'2", and her business partner Mark Turner was there. He's like 5'8", and they both kind of look at me, kind of like, "Who's this guy looking at us really hard and staring at us?" I said, "Hello, my name is Donald. I'm a big fan. Can you sign this autograph here?" And everyone's kind of looking at like, who is this person and why is he asking for an autograph? But the cool thing is that they appreciated that I knew who they were in the middle of Baltimore. And I asked her one question. I asked her, and I was 19 at the time. I asked her, "What do I have to do to be where you are now?" That was the question I asked her. And she gave me some great advice, which is what led me to sail on multi-hulls, because she had started racing multi-hulls at that point. She had raced on a boat called Foncia with Alain Gautier, and she was building. Could someone mute their microphone? Quick. Oh, sorry, that's cool. She had just started racing trimarans, and she told me, "You should hop on these kind of boats too, because you get to do more and learn more." And she left. And then the very next day, I went to the Chesapeake Bay Multihull Association and joined the Multihull Association. And that's how I got started in multi-hulls. And so she changed my life in that respect. And I thanked her numerous times before she retired and went off doing global outreach stuff. So let me just speed this up real quick. This is the route, just for those who don't know, I guess geography, I guess, I don't know. But the route starting in Baltimore, with the star there in the red, coming down, going across Indian Ocean, across the Pacific, back up around South America, back up to Baltimore. Most records of this type start over in Europe, in between England and France, in the English Channel. I'm American, and I want to start from America, so I'm starting from my hometown in Baltimore. And so the only rules I have to abide by is number one, I have to pass each of the capes to port, and I also have to cover no less than 21,600 nautical miles. If I do that correctly, which I should, then my passage has been successful. Okay, so just a couple quick fun facts about everything we get kind of covered here. Start to finish in Baltimore, 2 Atlantic records as warm-ups, and I say warm-ups generically because they are difficult still in their own right. As I mentioned earlier, the program is about a 10-year program that will we cover not just the Atlantic seaboard side, but the West Coast as well, because I believe Steve Fawcett still owns the Transpac record as well. So I don't think he'll mind me coming over and topping those numbers. The documentary film I mentioned before, Dark Seas. And so I mentioned to you guys today 3 records. It's 15 to 20 more records, depending on, of course, funding and timing, that kind of stuff. And as I mentioned, Living Classroom Foundation is our partnership for education. And just real quick, just cover this real quick, and then this is my last slide. And if you guys have questions after this, feel free to ask. One of the important things for our boat is our boat's going to be a clean energy boat. It's going to have 100% clean energy on board. Most people don't know this, but most record attempts are done on boats without engines on board. They'll carry a generator to power an alternator for the power, but they won't carry a diesel engine. They'll take it off the boat because of weight. The engines are very heavy. And so back in the day when there was catamarans in particular, you had 2 engines. And so they had double the weight. And so one of the cool things we have with technology now is we have redundancy in this power systems. So if you think back in the day when you only had a diesel engine on board, if something happened to the engine, you can't make power, thus your record's over. And a fun story is Ellen MacArthur in 2005, when she went around the world, 2004 when she went around the world, her generator died on her in the South Atlantic, and she had only been going for a week and a half. And had she not been able to fix it, her record would have been over. And so since then, boats have evolved quite a bit. And for non-sailors who had never seen this before, we have 3 new systems that power our boats. And the power powers our batteries, which powers our computers, our water maker, our radar, our autopilot, which burns most of our power. It's autopilot, but these systems power those. And so what you have is you have a hydro generator, and very important, this is not a plug for a product, these are just facts. There are 2 major builders of hydro generators. You have Watt-C, which is a French company. Ironically, the guy who built that just won the Vendee Globe. But it's a hydro generator that you can lower down on the back of the boat. And as the boat moves to the water, it turns like a water turbine would, and it charges up the batteries. The second company, which you see here in this picture here, is Ocean Vault. And the reason why I picked this picture for this presentation is because this motor system not only charges, but also can be used as an auxiliary propulsion system leaving the dock. And so you kind of have no reason to have a diesel engine on board unless you choose to, because this motor is battery powered. It can push you at 7 knots. And once you're underway, you just cut the propulsion thing off or turn the button off, and it turns as you move. And so the hydro generation technology is amazing. I've used them before, and it's amazing what they can do. And I know someone's going to ask, but there is some loss in speed because of the drag. But generally, it's about 0.2 knots of speed with the Watt-C and 0.4 knots with the Ocean Vault system. But you have to decide over a course of a week or 2 at sea, is that 0.4 knots worth of speed loss worth it compared to carrying all the diesel fuel and the weight of the engine on board? And so I would reckon that you'll probably go faster, longer overall with the electric generator. And then the last 2 systems we all know because we pretty much all have them at home or wherever, is one's a wind vane And I always tell people all the time, they always complain about wind vanes, how loud and noisy they are, and all that kind of stuff. But I always tell them two things. Number one, when you're at a marina, you generally don't have to plug in as much when you have a wind generator charging your batteries at all times, or at least when there's a breeze. And the second thing, especially monohull sailors hate this, they always say, oh, when you're sailing downwind, there's no apparent wind, so the wind generator doesn't do any good for you. And I always say to the monohull guys, well, if you get a faster boat, your apparent wind will shift forward, thus the wind generator will be more efficient for you. And so, since you guys all have multi-hulls, wind generators actually will do you pretty good service when you're sailing at a good speed, even downwind. As long as you're kind of about 120 true wind forward, you're going to probably get apparent wind at about 110, 90, and you'll be fine charging your batteries that way. And then, of course, the last one is solar panels, which you have there on the back of Asiona, the monohull there. And so, for example, my wife and I have 30 panels on our cabin up here, and they work really, really well. And so that's cheap, easy power that you can get sitting in a marina or sitting in an anchorage. And so take a look at those three things together. They charge your lithium batteries, which are much more efficient today than the AMGs used to be. And then from there, you power your water maker, you power your computer, you power, if you have hydro, some people are using fuel cells now. I'm not a big fan of those yet, but they're out there. You can power that up as well and keep that charged up as well. So one of the cool things is that if we all start moving toward clean energy systems, not only can we save money in the long run, but we'll have redundancy. Because imagine if your wind vane breaks, you still have your hydro generator and your solar panels. But if you don't have any of these things on board and all you have is a diesel engine and that breaks, you probably have to call Boat USA to pull you in. So so just something to think about. And again, for the non-sailors, if you want to see where these systems are most efficient, based on the wind angle and speed you're traveling at, the three systems work best. You get optimum power at certain areas. So near the equator, the sun's the brightest. When you're down south going super fast with the waves, the hydro generator is best. And when you're in the trade winds, you have your wind generator. And so the systems work really, really well. In my time in the trade winds in different places near the equator, these systems have worked really well for us. So, all right, so I'm gonna stop there. I hope that was exactly an hour. Good. All right. So thanks again, guys, listening in. We'll do a Q&A session here as long as you guys want. My email address is right there, Donald at Captain Donald Lawson. I'll keep it on the screen for you guys. If you guys want to check out my interviews, my podcasts, my Facebook, Instagram, sponsorship and partnerships, my wife created a link tree for me here. That's kind of an archive where you can go in there and you can click on it and you can look at different articles, presentations, and podcasts I've done over the years. So, and again, I encourage you guys to follow me on Facebook and Instagram. That way, you guys can check out some of the videos and pictures of some of these trips I've done. And then you also can reach out to me, ask me questions, and keep track of the updates with the records and the boat announcement that we'll be making hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So thank you guys very much. I am here for questions, or if no questions, I'm here to listen as well.
Well, thank you very much. One thing I've been often considering is why do some of these races not allow any sort of energy harvesting en route, such as using whatever you can get through wind and solar to power yourself through doldrums and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, some of the races are now evolving. I hate to use the word evolving like that, but people are getting smarter, and they're realizing that sponsors and companies who are involved in these projects want to have clean energy products. They want to show themselves to be responsible. And so if you look at some of the new sponsors out there now, like Vesta Wind and Asiona and Gamesa, a lot of these sponsors and these companies out there, they're all clean energy companies. And so I think they're forcing the stragglers to start to move with the times of technology.
Is it okay to harvest solar energy and use it for propulsion?
Right now, there's no limitation to solar, wind, or hydro that I'm aware of as of now. but some boats have chosen not to use it. But there are races now requiring, there's certain races that are requiring you to have clean energy options on board.
But you can use it for propulsion. or not.
Not for propulsion, no, only for charging purposes.
Answer is no.
I have a question about your mom because, I'm thinking about you as a kid. And the only thing I can equate it to is, I grew up sailing and all of a sudden my kid wanted to play soccer and had no idea. I had no idea about soccer. I mean, how did your mom actually,
Convince me, you're saying?
Well,
I know.
but
Well-
she must have hung in there with you.
Yeah, so
No idea about it. How did she do that?
yeah, so it's a fun story, and I'll try and make it brief, I promise. So when I was 9 years old, my mother was a camp counselor, and we did a trip down to Baltimore's harbor to live in classroom, and she knew I was going to be terrified of hopping on this boat, but she, being very persuasive in her own way, she convinced me to hop on the boat and go for the sail. And once I got out there and I experienced it, I got to ask the captain, hey, how far can you take a boat like this? And he said, well, technically you could take it around the world. And that's what got me hooked to it. And an important part of the story that I kind of leave out sometimes is that Living Classroom had just started and they were being funded and partnering with a program called Chesapeake Racing. If you guys have ever heard of this, back in the Volvo Windbread days. And because of that program, I got a chance to go sailing as a kid. And so when I got home, my mother saw the smile on my face, and my mom and dad made sure I started going to camp initially every summer and then every month after that. And there have been times where, without going too deep into this right now, we can talk about it offline if you guys want, but there's been times where I've gone through the ups and downs based on living in Baltimore at that time with social unrest in certain areas. And my parents kept me focused on my passion and my dreams because they grew up as athletes. All my family members were great athletes. I mean, track and field, basketball, soccer, football, all kinds of stuff. And I was decent at most sports, but I wasn't clearly on the all-American level like these guys were. And so I had the drive and the passion. And what happened for me was that I actually found a liking and found an opportunity to use my competitive nature and use my drive to actually compete on the water. So my parents were instrumental in not only getting me started, but keeping me focused through the ups and downs. And then, and also not just that, even like my in-laws back me up all the time. My wife and I were high school sweethearts, for you guys who don't know. And so long story short, she transferred to my school. She was a military kid. I saw her, told my mom at 14 years old. I met my future wife, pursued her, wore her down, got married. And from there, because as you can tell, even at a young age, I'm a pretty determined person. So I know and I see what I want. Sorry, honey, what I want, I pursue it. And so my in-laws have been great and helpful as well for the same thing. So I'm very fortunate to have a good network of people around me. And so you don't know what you're going to do, what you're going to become until you actually do it. But I guess as a parent, I wouldn't know, and I have no kids. But as a parent, I'm guessing your goal is to expose your kids to as much stuff as possible, and you'll find out what they fall in love with. And I'll give long answers. I'm sorry. That's part of my Naval Academy.
Yeah.
Tell us about the fast trimarans that are currently sitting in the Chesapeake.
Sorry, say that again.
Tell us about the fast trimarans, the big fast trimarans.
Oh, yeah. So the Chesapeake Bay, for those who haven't been over there before, is pretty vast. And so most of the boats we race and sail with out of there are pretty massive fast boats. So we have Sea Cart 30s over there. Of course, we have Farriers, Corsairs. Actually, the only 43-foot Corsair, actually, there's two Corsair 43s made, but the only one still active is out of there now. There's been Formula 40s in there for years, Stilettos over there. Man, I
Yeah, any big ones?
Any army?
The largest one that we've had over there was a 50-foot, was a multi-50 that was used for how about say the All-Star race, transatlantic race. She was over there for a long time. Now she's back in Europe. So that's the largest one that we've had over there that I know of. Yeah.
Do you own a boat?
So we're working on acquiring the boat for the record right now. And so the one thing I can say about that is that there's a lot of discussion happening right now. As I'm doing this presentation now, they're having meetings right now. Because there's a lot of people who believe in what we're doing, and there's a lot of people who are trying to help us get it done. And so the next boat that I will have will be the record boat. And I probably will end up keeping this boat until my wife makes me get rid of it. Say again?
Is it a French-built boat?
Potentially.
From Lord.
Plausible deniability. I cannot confirm or deny that as well.
Is it out of Lorient or Le Grandmont?
She's a good boat. She's very fast. You're not going to get it out of me.
You know some of the same people.
Yeah. Do we really? Oh, okay. So maybe we're talking about the same thing. Okay. Well, then you should email me later on. We'll talk about that afterwards. Okay.
So
well, yeah.
I do have another question about the race. You know, you were saying that you could, or at least it sounded like you could choose your own port to start at. Is there something in the rules about latitude? Because it seems like I'm living in South America and I want to start from Peru.
Yes.
That could be an advantage.
Excellent question. I've never been asked that question before in the presentation. That's an excellent question. So the rule of thumb is that you have to start above 32 degrees north.
Okay.
And you have to pass the equator twice. That's how they implemented that. Excellent question. That's why one of the rules is you have to do 21,600 nautical miles minimum. And if you're unable to cover that distance, let's say I started from Miami, for example, that would probably only be about 20,000 miles. So I will be required to pass through a waypoint at a certain point that they select to ensure I got the amount of miles required to qualify. If I missed the waypoint and finish, then the record was just a fun cruise around the planet.
I've got a question going back to that you can't use solar energy to power yourself.
No, so you can charge your boat with solar, wind, or hydro, but you cannot turn your motor on as propulsion to push the boat.
So how is that monitored?
Yes. Good question again. That's another good question. So the way it works is two parts. If you have a diesel engine on board, what happens if you decide to carry your diesel engine with your prop, the judge comes on board and locks the motor in place with a seal. And when you finish, that judge hops on the boat immediately to ensure that that lock they put on is still sealed. If the seal is broken, it was a fun cruise. For electrical motors, they take out the circuit that makes the motor a propulsion system. So they take it out, and they also seal that area. And when they come back, they remove the seal. The seal's still there. There's no circuit in there. Then you're good to go.
So to leave port, you're saying that you're using the motor to leave port.
You can sometimes. So when you take the diesel engine off the right. So when you take the diesel engine off the boat, you generally get a tow out. So you'll have a towboat take you out, or a support boat. If you're using your own propulsion, the judge will come out there with you on the boat, and once you cut the engine off, they'll seal it, and they'll hop onto the rib and watch you start from there. I always, when we've done passages like that, we've always had it done at the dock and have a towboat or support boat pull us out. And so one great example, when we were over in the Canaries, I was actually on a really fast lagoon, and we were trying to do this little route around La Palmas. The guy hopped on, locked one of the engines and not the other one. Wasn't our fault. wasn't our fault, but that's what happened. And so technically it was just a fun cruise, but it was a fun fast passage around. If you guys ever go over to the islands over there, you get a breeze off the Sahara Desert that comes pretty much for 4 days a week. And if you hook into it really well, you actually can do a circumnavigation of the island really, really fast. And actually, the Volvo teams, I keep saying the Volvo, the ocean race teams now, they train over there all the time. So if you want to see some cool boats training, it's over there in Spain, over there.
Just want a quick question here.
Yeah.
Did I mishear you, or did you say you are in a really fast lagoon?
So, okay, by monohull standards, boats that average 5, 6, 7 knots. I forgot who I was talking to. You guys are multi-haulers. So it was a fun cruiser, guys. Fun cruiser. See, I gotta remember who I'm talking to. So that's funny.
I have another question for you, and it's only because I've seen pictures of the cockpit and the solo racers, and the cockpit of Hugo Boss, some other ones. And I can't imagine after looking at those pictures actually being able to keep all the lines with is there some magic that they tell you when you buy one of those boats that says this is how you keep that rat's nest under control if you're single-handing?
Yeah. So Hugo Boss, for those who don't know, it's a IMOCA 60. It's a 60-foot boat used for the Vendee Globe around the world. And they're the first boat, if you will, to have a fully enclosed cockpit where all the lines and halyards are run from the mast into the cockpit to a pedestal grinder. And Alex Thompson controls everything from that location. The newest multi-hull, this trimaran from Francis Gabar, is also a fully enclosed cockpit now that has 2 jet fighter cockpits. And so it's really so what happens now is that when you're out there for long passages, especially shorthanded, fatigue is actually your biggest enemy. And I've told the story before, and it's just reality. I have hallucinated at sea before, being so tired before, because when you're out there for 19 days, and you're just you, and you're tired, you're going to start talking to your friend who's steering the boat, who's not there on the boat with you. And so one time for me in particular, I actually was doing a solo passage across the Atlantic on a boat called a Mini Transit. It's a 21-foot boat. And I lost power after hitting a storm, I think 3 days out. And I had to go the rest of the way, hand steering and tying lines to keep the tiller in place. And I was heading up to Block Island, around Long Island, New York. And that was the hardest passage I've ever done. And I didn't know if the tracking device still worked. Fortunately, it did. My wife and them were monitoring me the entire time, but I didn't know if they were. And imagine going at 6 knots for 2 weeks, hand steering in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It's really hard. So one of the things is fatigue. And so we're designing these boats now to give you the optimum protection, to keep the water off you, keep the heat off you when you're in the tropics. That way you're able to be more efficient when you're out there. And so if you guys get a chance, check out Hugo Boss's Open 60, you'll see their enclosed cockpit. And right now I think there's a new boat that just got launched as well. I think 11th Hour Racing just launched a boat that has a pretty enclosed cockpit as well. So it's pretty smart stuff. I'm surprised that it didn't happen before. So.
A question. I'm looking on screen at the picture of you sitting on the boom of a monohull.
Yes.
And trying to figure out that rig.
Excellent question. So the guy who designed that, I hope I say this right, Wally or someone, I can't think of his name now. He designed carbon fiber rigs that had no spreaders on them. And that's Bruce Schwab's old Open 60 right there. He sailed around the world with no spreaders and a carbon mast. The carbon mast is kind of like a fishing rod. And so we had running backstays. We had I had one fixed forestay, but no shrouds, no spreaders. And one of the cool things about that boat is that you can jibe it and tack it without worrying about hitting the boom on the spreaders or anything, because there's no spreaders.
Right.
And so one of the cool things about that picture right there is me trying to show off myself with the old VHF camera there. You guys notice there. Tells you how old the picture is now. Yeah, so yeah, that's pretty cool.
So I'm noticing this carbon fiber strut. Is that sort of a
Yeah.
compression that acts?
It's a boom vang.
Except for compression.
Yep, it's a boom vang. Exactly, it's a boom vang. It's one on
And
both
the
sides.
the other thing that looks like a storm sail, which is kind of inside the boom, that's right by your foot.
So no, that's a strop to gather the mainsail up near the tack when we reef the sail. So this is Doyle, right? That you're referring to?
Right. Yeah.
Yes, so that's just a strop. So when the mainsail comes down, it doesn't the tack and the up there doesn't fall off to the side of the boat off the boom there.
Right.
Yep. So yeah, so that's back when I had hair, by the way. You guys know this now. I've gone full Michael Jordan with my head now, compared to that picture. So cool.
Oh yeah. All right.
So
Hey,
any other
Donald.
questions? Yes.
This
that's
is Scott.
Hey, Scott.
How are you doing, bud? Hey, I
Good,
just
good.
want to let you know I did put in the chat the sunglasses. I don't know if you want to give it to them.
Oh yeah.
And
See if I can
in
find
house, I marked it down in the
Cool.
chat for everybody. Just wanted to let you tell the people if you
Yeah.
like.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
absolutely. So one of the cool things our partners are doing to help us with our project is offering discounts on their products. So Rios and their sunglasses, which I'm wearing here, I have a 20% discount that goes toward our stuff. And so if you're ever looking for sunglasses that float, sunglasses that look good and cool, these are the ones for you right here. And just put the code in. I think it's HI Captain Lawson 20, I think it is. And then and actually, is that what it is? I think I still off of memory,
Yes.
by the way. Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I still off of
You
memory.
did
Yeah,
right.
cool. Okay. Yeah. And so check it out. And then also it also helps my partners, it helps us to leave a nice kind word to them as well, saying that how much you guys appreciate me and my sea stories and that kind of stuff. So if you guys ever decide to do that, please do that as well. Oh, cool. Thank you, Andy. I love Zoom, by the way. We used to use Skype back in the day. Zoom is so much more efficient. I'll just want to put that out there. Cool. Any other questions? I know we've gone a little longer than I promised, Diane. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm glad that you can stay up late. We appreciate you being on the East Coast. I know it's 3 hours later there for you.
Well, we travel a lot. Time zones are just flipping their imagination, So
I grew up on the East Coast. I'm kind of
yeah. So so you know how it feels to sit here and tired. Yeah. But so I'll just close off quick for you guys, and then Diane, I'll be quiet at that point. Thank you guys so much for listening in and talking with us today. And hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. Again, I always suggest people to follow me on Facebook and Instagram because that's the easiest way to communicate with me. Because if I post something, a picture or a fast lagoon picture, you guys can call me out quickly on that kind of stuff. So yeah, so thank you guys so much. Feel free to reach out to me. Diane, it's in your hands.
Yeah. Thank you very much. We've been really enjoying hearing what you're up to and planning. And you said to me something about you were going to try to get out to the West Coast, but I think COVID got in the way of that. So
Yeah.
wondering, maybe like after you go around the world, are you going to try to get out here, or what do you?
Oh no, it should be sooner than that. And actually, if things work out, it'd be a lot sooner than that. Actually, it could be as soon as next month. So I have, first and foremost, I have another presentation scheduled with St. Francis Yacht Club. Scott, help me out here. When is it? November 17th?
Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
think it's 16th, but
It's
close
16th.
enough.
Well, I'm in the ballpark. All right.
17th.
All right, good for government work. Yeah, so 16th of November, I should be in St. Francis. Well, I'm speaking Zoom for St. Francis Yacht Club because of COVID as well. But I hopefully will be over there before then to do some more work over there. So
Well, yeah, if you're able to come to Seattle, we'd sure like to see you up here.
That would be awesome. I actually look forward to doing that. I did make that promise to you last year, and again, I'm sorry about everything happened with COVID and stuff, but we'll try to make that happen. And beyond that as well, I like traveling. My wife and I like going to yacht clubs and visiting centers and stuff, especially people who are passionate about multi-hulls. And last story, I promise, and I'll be quiet. I took my wife sailing in 2009 on a monohull out in the bay of Annapolis, and we're bouncing around, slamming around. Didn't like it. The very next day, I took her out in that 43-foot trimaran, and we're blasting out 15 knots downwind, just a jib in the main. It was blowing stink out there, but we were flying across the water. And for you guys who've been to the Naval Academy, there's a Governor Mark just out from the academy where the submarines and cruisers anchor off. We went out to that marker, and there's a TP-52 out there training. We blew by them as they were rounding the marker, putting their kite up, and we came back in. And my wife said to me, "Huh, what kind of boat is this?" I said, "Oh, it's a trimaran." She said, "Well, we're a trimaran family now." so that's the official statement by her why I have to do what I have to do. I'm just kidding, but that cool story I always tell people. So yeah, so all right, I'll be quiet. Sorry, Diane, go ahead.
Well, yeah, we can just hang out and chat as long as we want. At a certain point, I should stop the recording. So should I stop?
So
it now?
when you
Yeah,
retire, what boat are you gonna buy for yourself to go day sailing?
Day sailing. Oh wow. So if I have a choice, I will probably go back to one of my first multi-hull experiences, which is a F-28R Corsair, because it's smaller, it's trailable, and I can handle it pretty much by myself as I get older, like older. By the time I probably have some new trimarans that's probably more comfortable than that. But I think for simple, when I get to my latter years, when I don't have time or energy to muscle around a bigger boat, it'll probably be an F-28R, probably.
Good choice.
Oh, thank you.
It's been real enjoyable to hear you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, it was an honor to talk to you guys. I love talking about sailing, and I will talk your ear off. I promise you that. So,
You're welcome to any time.
cool.